A man stands on a balcony of cedar and gold in Jerusalem, watching the wind push dust across a limestone courtyard. Every time his hands close around meaning, it vanishes. Most people read the scroll he left behind and assume it is a tragedy. He sees the traps before they spring. The fool walks in absolute darkness, stumbling over his own feet, crashing into financial and relational ruin. The preacher nods. Wisdom is clearly better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. But then he walks out to the burial caves, carved into the hillsides, just beyond the city gates. He runs his hand along the freezing, rough-hewn stone of a tomb. He considers the bones resting quietly inside the dark chambers, and a terrifying realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. The dirt does not care how many books you read. The wise man dies exactly like the fool. They both go down into the ground. They both return to dust. And, within a few short generations, the relentless turning of the earth will bleach the memory of them, both from the minds of the living. All the late nights studying under the lamp, all the carefully acquired knowledge, all the brilliant insights quietly erased by time. The scrolls are not a ladder out of the mist. They are a magnifying glass showing him how deeply he is trapped. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. He writes in chapter 1, verse 18, "The more knowledge, the more grief." Seeing the world clearly doesn't save you from the vapor. It just forces you to watch it evaporate while everyone else is happily distracted. They read those famous opening words, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless, and they assume they have stumbled upon the Bible's resident cynic by the illusion of control. The grand intellectual project is a total failure. It leaves him more isolated, more anxious, and far more exhausted than when he began. He has tried massive wealth. He has tried architectural legacy. He has tried supreme philosophical knowledge. Every single path has led him right back to the silent, unforgiving graveyard. But just when the despair reaches its absolute breaking point, the preacher does something completely unexpected. Here is the pivot that shocks everyone who reads the scroll. The preacher looks at the inescapable graveyard. He looks at the vapor, and he tells you to go have a good dinner. 6 times across the 12 chapters. Right when the philosophical anxiety reaches its absolute peak, he drops the exact same refrain. Eat your bread with joy. Drink your wine with a merry heart. Enjoy the wife of your youth. Find satisfaction in the heavy sweat of your daily labor. He stops looking up at the sky. He looks at the table. He stops analyzing the cosmos. He tastes the food. He stops fighting the mist. Most readers assume this is ancient nihilism. They hear the echo of a fatalist surrender. Eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow we die. They think the preacher is telling you to numb the pain of a meaningless universe with temporary physical distractions. They think this is a manifesto of ancient depression. They treat it like a dark room you are supposed to hurry through. They think he is throwing his hands up and giving up on meaning altogether. But if you understand Hevel, you realize he is doing the exact opposite. This is not the cynical resignation of a defeated man. It is the only sane response to a fleeting world. Because life is a vapor. It cannot be possessed. It can only be experienced. If you demand that a cup of wine give your life eternal significance, the wine will turn bitter in your mouth. If you demand that your spouse fix the cosmic loneliness of your soul, you will crush them under the weight of an impossible expectation. If you demand that your daily work carve your name into the granite of history, you will work yourself into an early grave and hate every second of it. But if you let the vapor be vapor, everything changes. If you accept that the bread is just bread, you can finally taste the warm crust. If you accept that your work is just a temporary assignment, you can finally enjoy the satisfying ache in your muscles at the end of the day. If you accept that your family is a fragile, passing gift, you can actually sit in the room with them instead of anxiously plotting your next career move. Joy is what happens when you stop demanding permanence. The mist is a terrible foundation for a massive monument. To get back to the more hopeful, comfortable parts of the scripture. But that reading completely misses the magic of what is happening. But it is a profoundly beautiful thing to watch against the morning sun. The preacher is inviting you to lower your hands, open your fists, and actually inhabit the tiny, fleeting, intensely physical moments God has placed right in front of you. It sounds so incredibly simple. It sounds like a massive relief. So why is it so terrifying for a modern audience to actually do it? You know exactly why it is terrifying. We have built an entire modern civilization on the exact opposite premise. Think about the device sitting in your pocket, vibrating with a quiet notification. Think about the cold, artificial blue light, illuminating your face in a dark room as you check your inbox one last time before trying to force your brain to power down for the night. You are carrying a relentless, humming machine that constantly whispers a different gospel than the one the preacher is offering. The modern world tells you that your value is entirely tied to your output. It tells you that if you just optimize your daily routine, if you just invest your capital correctly, if you just accumulate enough degrees and leverage, you can finally build a fortress that the vapor cannot penetrate. We call this ambition. We call it productivity. We dress it up in the highly respectable clothes of career planning and financial independence. Ecclesiastes is not a book of despair. It is the destruction of a prison. The real question of this text isn't, it is not a virtue. It is a defense mechanism. We are terrified of sitting quietly at a wooden table and just tasting a piece of bread. Because if we stop moving, if the deafening noise of our own productivity finally goes silent, we will have to face the terrifying reality of our own impermanence. We use our busy schedules like an anesthetic. We overbook our calendars and obsess over our 5-year plans to numb the quiet, aching realization that we are fundamentally out of control. We want to own things because we think ownership equals permanence. If you are in a season where you feel a heavy, crushing weight sitting right in the center of your chest, a bone-deep burnout that a week of vacation cannot even begin to cure, Ecclesiastes is holding up a mirror to your exhaustion. You are tired because you are trying to hold smoke in your bare hands. You are trying to act like the god of your own small universe. You are trying to manage every variable, predict every market fluctuation, and secure every border against the relentless cycle of the sun. The preacher is begging you to resign. He is offering you permission to clock out from the impossible job of sustaining your own existence. But how do you actually let go of that illusion of control without spiraling into complete nihilism? Why is life so hard? It's this. What do you do when winning the game doesn't fix you? How do you live in the mist without losing your mind? The assemblyman saves the answer for the very end of his massive experiment. And it requires you to understand one final, deeply misunderstood Hebrew word. The assemblyman stands before a quiet crowd in the stone courtyard. The torches are burning low. The arguments have all been exhausted. The monuments have crumbled under his logic. The human wisdom has failed, and the heavy weight of the vapor has settled over the room. He has systematically dismantled every human illusion of control. And now, in the very last verses of the scroll, he delivers his final verdict. The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Most people read that sentence and think it is a threat. They think the preacher has finally put his pastor robe back on. They think he is saying, life is short and meaningless. So, just obey the rules and be afraid of the angry judge in the sky. They read it as a heavy, joyless obligation tacked onto the end of a depressing book. But that is not the word he uses, and he is not issuing a threat. The Hebrew word translated as fear is yirah. It does not mean terror. We are a species exhausted by our own ambitions. We climb ladders. We build little empires in our careers, in our bank accounts. It does not mean cowering in a corner, waiting for a cosmic hammer to drop when you make a mistake. It means awe. It means a profound, trembling reverence when you are confronted with something so massive, so beautifully terrifying, that your only logical response is to fall to your knees. It is the feeling of standing at the edge of the roaring sea, watching waves crash against the rocks. It is the feeling of watching a thunderstorm split the dark sky over the mountains. It is the feeling of realizing you are not the creator of the world. Yira is not a cage. It is the ultimate release. We spend our lives trying to shrink God down to the size of a manageable consultant. We want Him to bless our career goals, protect our financial investments, and validate our small, vaporous empires. But the Assemblyman will not let you have a small God. He demands that you look up. He demands that you face the overwhelming, untamable reality of the divine. When you embrace Yira, you finally resign from the exhausting job of playing God. You acknowledge that you cannot control the wind. You cannot capture the mist. And you cannot stop the relentless cycle of the sun. And you realize that the God who set the stars in their courses, the God who measured the oceans in the palm of His hand, in our reputations, secretly hoping that the next milestone will finally be the one that makes us feel solid, does not need your help to keep the universe running. Your job is not to build an eternal kingdom. Your job is to trust the one who already did. The awe is the antidote to the anxiety. If God is entirely in control of the heavy machinery of time and eternity, then you are finally free to live in the present tense. You are free to eat the warm bread. You are free to love your spouse. You are free to do your daily work with excellence, knowing the eternal outcome is entirely in His hands. The Assemblyman drops the pen. He finishes the scroll, and the echoes of what he has written change the shape of everything we thought we knew. The king gathered all the silver in the ancient world and realized his hands were still completely empty. The builder constructed monuments of cedar and gold and watched the wind begin to quietly erase them. The scholar mapped the far edges of human intellect and found the dark grave waiting for him anyway. The Assemblyman stared at the terrifying cycle of the sun and finally resigned from the exhausting job of running the universe. We are starving for permanence in a world that refuses to stand still. We carry a heavy anxiety in our chests, a quiet terror. The anxious mind stopped trying to capture the mist and tasted the profound joy of a simple piece of warm bread. The weary worker stopped demanding an eternal legacy and learned to love the quiet ache of a daily task. The human soul dropped to its knees in trembling awe and discovered that letting go is the only way to truly live. That if we do not produce enough, achieve enough, or figure it all out, our lives will simply not matter. He has everything. He has planted gardens that rival the memory of Eden, with vast pools of water reflecting skies that seem to answer only to Him. We want to be the directors of our own universe. The author of this book is going to look you in the eye and confirm your worst fear. You cannot control it. You cannot build a legacy that time will not eventually erase. But He is not doing this to break your heart. He is doing this to set you free. The peace He offers does not come from figuring out the secret of the universe. It comes from surrendering the demand to know it. To feel the weight of this rescue, you cannot just skim the English translation. You have to step into the courtroom of the author's mind. You have to meet the man holding the pen, sitting in the shadows of a palace he built for nothing. Because his title is the first clue that changes how you read every single page, the English translations call him the preacher. It is a polite, church-friendly word. It conjures up an image of a man standing behind a heavy wooden pulpit, wearing a pressed robe, delivering a tidy sermon with 3 points and a moral conclusion on a Sunday morning. You can smell the stale coffee and hear the rustling of bulletin papers. He is not a preacher. He has silver stacked in the treasury like common stones. He has the rarest imported spices burning in the halls behind him. He is something far more dangerous. The Hebrew word used in the opening line of the scroll is quohelet. It comes from the root kahal, which means to assemble, to gather, to summon a congregation. But he is not gathering people to hand out comforting religious platitudes. He is gathering them to dismantle their illusions. Think of him less like a pastor and more like a prosecuting attorney. He is pacing across the cold stone floor of a courtroom, stacking brutal evidence on a wooden table until the defense completely collapses. For centuries, readers have assumed this voice belongs to King Solomon. The text certainly wears his clothes. It introduces itself as the words of the son of David, king in Jerusalem. It borrows the staggering wealth, the legendary intellect, the imported cedar wood, and the gold chariots of Israel's most prosperous era. It sounds like a man who has tasted the finest wine and worn the heaviest crowns. But scholars who study the ancient texts notice a detail hiding in the grammar. The Hebrew used in Ecclesiastes is late. It is filled with linguistic fingerprints, Persian loanwords, and Aramaic structures that simply did not exist in the golden age of Solomon. The heavy smoke drifting out into the cold evening air. You can hear the faint sound of hired singers in the lower courts, centuries before the Babylonian exile. The author is putting on a royal costume. He is adopting the persona of the ultimate king, the man who possessed literally everything a human being could ever desire, to run a massive philosophical experiment. The strategy is brilliant. If a peasant tells you that wealth and power cannot buy peace, you might suspect he is just bitter about his own poverty. You might think he is comforting himself with empty words while he shivers in the cold. But if the richest, wisest, the most successful man in the history of the world stands up in the assembly and tells you that the entire system is bankrupt, you have to listen. Quohelet is the gatherer. He gathers wisdom. He gathers wealth. He gathers architectural triumphs and military victories. He builds a towering monument of human achievement, stacking it high enough to pierce the clouds. And then, he gathers the audience to watch him burn it all to the ground. He is the assemblyman holding a torch to the things we secretly worship. He wants you to see the smoke. He wants you to smell the ashes of human ambition. And the fire starts with the most famous word in the entire scroll. It is a word that English Bibles have fundamentally misunderstood for 400 years. Music bought and paid for by a treasury that never empties. He is the wealthiest, wisest ruler of the ancient world. It is a cold winter morning in Jerusalem. Before the palace wakes, the assemblyman steps out onto the limestone balcony, feeling the freezing stone through the leather of his sandals. He takes a deep breath of the sharp air and exhales. A white cloud of breath appears in front of his face. It hangs there for a single second, thick and visible against the dawn, and then it vanishes. He watches it dissolve into nothing, and in that fleeting, vanishing cloud, he finds the thesis for the entire human experience. Open almost any English translation to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 2, and you will read a famous, crushing sentence. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. The King James Version prefers a slightly more elegant translation. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. The word translated there as meaningless or vanity is the Hebrew word hevel. It is the heartbeat of the entire scroll, echoing 38 times across 12 short chapters. But hevel does not mean pointless. It does not mean without value or devoid of purpose. The literal meaning of the word is smoke. It is vapor. It is a passing breath. You can see its true weight in other corners of the ancient texts. In Proverbs chapter 21, wealth gained by a lying tongue is called a fleeting vapor, a hevel, and he is staring at the dust, realizing he is exactly the same as it is. Or look at the very first murder in the book of Genesis, the second son of Adam and Eve. The boy whose life is cut brutally short in a field is named Abel. In Hebrew, his name is Hevel. A life that appeared for a moment, bright and fragile, before disappearing back into the dirt. That root changes everything about how you read this book. When the preacher surveys your hard work, your savings account, and your carefully managed reputation, he is not dismissing them as garbage. He is diagnosing their nature. It is not a void. It is a mist. You can see smoke. You can smell it. It is entirely real, and it is a gift to experience. But the moment you try to close your fist around it, the moment you try to capture it and hold it forever, it slips right through your fingers. You cannot put vapor in a vault. You cannot build a concrete foundation on a breath. The tragedy of the human experience is not that life has no meaning. The tragedy is that we are trying to build permanent castles out of smoke. We expect our careers to give us an eternal sense of identity. We expect our wealth to make us permanently secure. We demand that a vapor act like a rock. He builds a monument. The wind erodes it. He hoards a fortune. A fool will inherit it. and when it inevitably evaporates, we collapse into anxiety. The vapor is beautiful, but it cannot be captured. But what drives a man to try and capture it in the first place? To understand the obsession, you have to look up from the smoke and watch the terrifying, unstoppable machine that governs the sky above it. The sun rises. The sun sets. It pants and hurries back to where it began. The wind blows south. The wind turns north. It spins and returns on its ancient circuits. The rivers pour into the sea. The sea never fills. The water evaporates, returns to the source, and carves the exact same stone path all over again. Generations arrive. Generations vanish. The earth remains exactly as it was. This is the terrifying rhythm of Ecclesiastes chapter 1. It is a rapid-fire list of nature doing the same thing, day after day, century after century. The preacher uses a specific phrase 29 times to describe this arena. He calls it life under the sun. That phrase is not a geographical description. It is a locked door. It describes a closed system. He learns every proverb, studies every star, and maps every corner of human intellect. The grave takes his mind just as quietly, a world trapped in an endless loop of mechanical repetition. You wake up, you drink your coffee, you commute, you answer the emails, you drive home in the dark, you sleep, you do it again. The machine grinds on. It does not care about your promotions. It does not pause for your grief. It will not remember your name. We try to break the cycle by doing something new. We upgrade our technology. We move to a different city. We convince ourselves that our generation has finally shattered the historical mold. But the preacher looks at our glittering modern achievements and shakes his head. What has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. You build a legacy. Time erodes it. You accumulate wealth. A stranger inherits it. You organize your life. Chaos dismantles it. It is a crushing, suffocating realization. If the relentless machinery of your own daily routine is stirring up questions you've never been allowed to ask in church, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the assemblyman pivots his strategy as it takes the mind of a beggar in the street. Same result again and again. If he cannot beat the cycle with physical permanence, he will beat it with his intellect. He will outsmart the vapor. He locks himself in his study. He unrolls the heavy parchment scrolls. He investigates madness. He studies philosophy. He maps the stars and catalogs the proverbs. He decides that if the hands cannot build a permanent legacy, the mind will. But he is about to hit a brick wall that no amount of education can break through. The oil lamps burn low in the royal library, casting long, flickering shadows against cedar walls. The air is thick with the smell of burning olive oil and dry, crumbling papyrus. The assemblyman sits surrounded by unrolled scrolls, records of ancient justice, catalogs of proverbs, philosophical debates about the nature of the cosmos. He is reading, calculating, categorizing. He believes that if he can just understand the hidden mechanics of the universe, he can finally outsmart it. If he can map the mist, maybe he can survive it. He observes the wise man and the fool. The wise man walks with his eyes wide open, navigating the political courts and the chaotic marketplace with calculated skill.